This program is brought to you by cable franchise fees and generous donations from viewers like you.
Is being held virtually using the Zoom platform. My name is Jack Jumpstick, and as the chair of the Amherst Planning Board, I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and is available via Amherst Media live stream. Minutes are being taken. Board members, I will take a roll call. When I call your name, unmute yourself, answer affirmatively, and then place yourselves back on mute. Maria Chow.
Here.
Tom Long.
Here.
Andrew McDougall.
Present.
Doug Marshall.
Present.
Janet McGowan is not present. She gave us notice. She's not feeling well. Johanna Newman.
Here.
Great. And I'm here, obviously. So board members, if technical issues arise, please let Pam know. If technical difficulties occur, we may need to pause temporarily to fix the problem, then continue the meeting. Discussion may be suspended while the technical issues are addressed, and the minutes will note if this happened. Please use the raise hand function to ask a question or make a comment. I will see your raised hand and call on you to speak. After speaking, remember to remute yourself. Opportunity for public comment will be provided during the general public comment period and is reserved for comments regarding items that are not on tonight's agenda. Public comment may also be heard at other appropriate times during the meeting. Please be aware the board will not respond to comments during general public comment period. If you wish to make a comment, join the meeting via the Zoom teleconferencing link. This link is shown on the slide and is also available on the meeting agenda posted on the town website via the calendar listing for this meeting. You can also go to the planning board webpage and click on the most recent agenda, which lists the Zoom link at the top of the page. Please indicate if you wish to make a comment by clicking the raise hand button when public comment is solicited. If you have joined the Zoom meeting using a telephone, please indicate you wish to make a comment by pressing *9 on your telephone. When called on, please identify yourself by stating your full name and address and put yourself back into mute when finished speaking. Residents can express their views up to 3 minutes at the discretion of the planning board chair. If a speaker does not comply with these guidelines or exceeds their allotted time, their participation will be discontinued from the meeting. So with that said, looking at the agenda, I don't believe we have minutes. Okay, no minutes.
I'm sorry, no.
So 6:35, I see that we are at 6:30. We actually start a little bit after 6:30, but so we are at 6:35, so we actually can have the site plan review meeting. So let me introduce that. Ooh. Let me grab that sheet. Okay. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, this public hearing has been duly advertised and notice thereof has been posted and is being held for the purpose of providing the opportunity for interested citizens to be heard regarding SPR 2021-10 Emily Dickinson Museum, 280 Main Street and 20 Triangle Street. I probably should have said, yeah, that's what we're Emily Dickinson Museum, 280 Main Street and 20 Triangle Street. So this was what the public hearing is. Request site plan review approval to replace the existing HVAC system and electrical system from the street to the homestead with the addition of a pad mounted generator and pad mounted chiller and fencing of 7'3" 3 inches and 9' 0 inches in height for screening off of 280 Main Street, and pad mounted transformer associated with 20 Triangle Street. And this is all on map 14B parcels 20, 26, and 27 in the RG zoning district. So at this time, I'd like to ask, are there any board member disclosures? I see none. And then the applicant, we have Jane Wall and Shantia, is that how you pronounce her first name? Okay. So you are welcome to present your project.
Thank you. I think I'll begin and we'll hand off to Shanti in a moment. And Shanti, if you don't mind putting the PowerPoint up on the screen, I'll just take a quick look at the first two slides and then ask you to continue. But as a just a general introduction to this project, it's good to be back with you relatively soon after the last time the museum came before the planning board to talk about what is really the most ambitious restoration project we've undertaken up to this point, and the main outline of the project overall is to restore the main block, which is, what you see front and center here, excluding the addition to the right, to the east, to restore the interior of that whole section to be more what it was in the 19th century, based on kind of forensic investigation of building changes and of decorative finishes and wallpapers. So that's going to involve restoring the double parlors on the first floor of the homestead, the wide first and second story main stair halls, and a transverse hall that leads from the east addition into the west, the parlors on the west, a room at the top of the stairs, and a passageway that led from Emily Dickinson's room to the room her mother occupied in the last years of her life. And there's some telling documentary accounts of how Emily Dickinson herself cared for her invalid mother during that time. So it's an interesting story for us to be able to tell. Of course, the main reason we're here with you this evening is not really to talk about what's going on the interior, but to talk about what's going on the exterior and on the site. So I think at this point, I'll ask Shanti if you would continue.
Sure. Good evening. Let's see, I'm a preservation consultant who is working with the Emily Dickinson Museum to project manage the preservation aspects of this pretty exciting project. The interior restorations, very exciting, I think, as you can imagine. But one thing that it will involve is, as you can see on this site plan, the hatched marks, the darker areas on the plan are all hardwood strip flooring from the early 20th century that will be removed to expose the softwood flooring that would be familiar to Emily Dickinson and her family members. And the result of that will be that the areas that are bubbled are 6 doorways. On the left-hand side are 4 French doors, and then to the right is the main stair hall, north doorway and south entry. All of those doors were shortened in the early 20th century when the softwood flooring went back in. So they now need to be re-lengthened to their original height through these Dutchman type repairs. There'll be a little bit of adjustment at the thresholds as well to accommodate for the restoration of the door heights. And so that's happening at 6 doors. This is the south entry. There's a bit more happening here as well, which is pretty exciting. What we are looking at is an early 20th century appearance. The project will restore this entry. If you look on the left, you can see what is existing, and below it is what is proposed for restoration. Restoring the door, again, to be familiar to Emily Dickinson. The door has been on site for a number of years, so that door will be restored, including the etched glass windows. And again, some changes you can see on the left-hand side to some of the entry surround features to restore them back to the period of significance in the mid to later 19th century. And again, some minor changes at the north entry, which is the slide on the left, and the French doors on the right. The other exterior aspect of this restoration project is the replacement of the existing storm windows, exterior storm windows, with new interior storm windows, except at the 4 French doors on the right. Those will have custom, new custom exterior storm windows. Let's see, let me stop my share for now. That's the partial interior restoration and partial exterior. It imposes a bit on the exterior. And then the other large portion of this project is, I'm assuring your packet, we didn't pull together drawings for it, but it is the installation of the chiller and the generator and the transformer. The chiller and the generator are located to the north of the early 20th century garage and fenced in, as your chair described, with a wood fence that's approximately 7 foot 3 inches on 2 sides and at the rear 9 feet. And then a pad mounted transformer over closer to 20 Triangle Street. That's primarily because it's a significantly long run from Triangle Street, which is where the electric has to come in, over to the garage. It could go closer to the garage, except that then it would have to be larger. So the choice was made to keep it smaller and somewhat shielded on the landscape. I think that that's the extent of it, Jane. Have I missed anything?
Those are the main elements, and we'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you. Well, I lost with all these pages here, what I'm what I'm referring to here. Okay, so now, all right, here we go. Sorry for that. So now I'd like to discuss a site visit report. And Chris, mentioned several of the board members were able to make it this afternoon. And do we have a volunteer?
I'd be happy to give a little synopsis.
Okay.
So Doug and Chris and I and Andrew were able to meet with Jane on the site. We looked at the back of the outbuilding near the Emily Dickinson main house where the proposed chiller and generator are going to be. We discussed the fencing around that equipment and had a conversation about the heights of the fence around that. We discussed the access to that area. And then we walked further, oh gosh, I don't know what direction it was, but toward Triangle Street, where the plan is to have a transformer on site in order to bring power to the chiller and the generator. And I don't know, that was the extent of the site visit.
Thank you. So at this time, Chris, do you have your hand up?
Thank you. I just wanted to know if Shantia or Jane could describe the fence that's going to go around the generator and chiller area. What is it made out of and what color is it going to be?
It's a wood fence vertical boards, vertical panels that make the full run from the ground level up to the top of the fence. On the east side, the side that faces the parking pad, there'll be two large gateway doors that'll be secured together when closed with hardware. The color is intended to be the same as the garage, which is a kind of oyster color.
Thank you.
Great. All right, so board members, Doug?
Yeah, I have two questions. One, first, when you put the interior storms on the windows of the house, that will expose the existing sashes to the weather. Are those sashes of historic value, and are they better off protected with some sort of storm on the exterior?
The existing storm windows are the whole system of interior storm windows right now. They are interior storm windows, except for the long exterior panels over the French doors. On the there are 4 on the west side, 2 on the east side, and 1 on the south. And those cover each one of those. That's a set of 7 exterior panels that cover the French doors on the house, and all of the rest of the system has been interior storm windows for about the last 10 years.
Oh,
So the interior storm windows that need replacement will be replaced in kind. The sash, the original sash, we think it's probably, we don't think it's the 1813 sash, but at some point after that, yeah, it is. Those are of historic value, and we maintain those with periodic reglazing and repainting.
okay. My second question, Jane, has to do with what you just said about the fence. When I look at the drawing, I see horizontal boards rather than vertical boards. I'm looking at SP1 in the lower corner, detail 3.
Ah, and that is my error. I'm opening the plan at this point.
They sort of seem to correspond to the clapboards on the garage, so
Yes.
that makes some sense.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry about that. That's my
See
error.
them.
Okay. No further questions.
Oh, may I
Sure.
amend something that I said at the site visit?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and it had to do with the fence, the wall of the fence on the north side, which is taller than the other 2 sides of the fence, and the 9-foot height has to do with the plywood sheets that support the control panels. So the control panels are 8 feet tall, and they're 12 inches off the ground. So that's the control panels then are at 9 feet, and that is actually the reason for the height of that side of the fencing, just to shield so that the panels are not really visible from any perspective.
Good. All right. Andrew, please.
Thanks, Jack. Excuse me. Thanks. I was actually going to ask about the heights, and I think I followed you there, but maybe you could explain one more time, Jane, the 8-foot height or the 9-foot height that's something that's being attached to that 9-foot wall, or you're saying that's the height of related to the generator and the chiller?
That is, as I understand it, that's the height of the panel that, let's see, Shanti has put this.
Yeah.
And Shanti, please help.
Yeah.
If you
So,
can,
so
because
what,
your control, sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. We're looking west right now. So facing the garage, to the right of the garage, as Jane described, are the gateway doors. The pole to the right, which is taller, it says 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches sloped cap. That's 9 feet. And that's where the panel, the electrical and control panels are going to be mounted. So that ends up being 9 feet of plywood, which is why it's forcing the fence to be 9 feet. Otherwise, you have a foot or, well, almost 2 feet, I guess, of plywood sticking up at the back of the enclosure. Does that help?
I may just be dense here, so apologies.
No.
It's mounting to,
So plywood will be mounted to the back, the inside
like here?
of the back portion of the fence, the north. Is my cursor visible? I don't know
Yes.
whether.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so the plywood is mounted somewhere along here, and it goes up about 1.5 feet more than the 7.3, but we want to keep that 7'3" line because it's better visually. Otherwise, it starts bumping into the roof
Okay.
of the garage. So there's, when you're in the enclosure, there'll be a panel against this north fence that has all the controls for the chiller and the panels for the chiller and the generator.
Okay, I don't know if I tried to annotate the screen if you could see that or not, but that, I guess that makes sense. So the purpose is not,
Yes.
it's really to
exactly.
accommodate, it's nothing to do with visual screening, because you actually would, sounds like you probably would be able to see that from the parking lot, certainly from the building. Because that, you whatever, if you have a panel coming off here, that would all be exposed.
Yes, exactly. You may see a
Okay.
little bit of something there.
Okay. No, thanks for clarifying that. Actually
Yeah,
helps me
sure,
understand
of
this better.
course.
That was all I had to ask, Jack.
Thank
Sure.
you. All right. I keep losing my page here. Sorry. I guess we can open up to any other board comments. And I see none. So, Doug.
Well, I thought I would just repeat a question that came up at the site visit, which was whether you considered some sort of battery storage as a power supply rather than the diesel fueled generator solution.
Yes, we've had a chance to briefly check in with the engineer for the project, which is Quantum Engineering. And the quick check-in, the quick response is that would be the energy requirement would mean a much larger enclosure, a much larger courtyard than is planned for the generator and the chiller. So it would occupy more space, would be considerably more expensive. And it's the engineer's opinion that that kind of storage solution may not be adequate to support the museum during an extended power failure. But the answer to your question is no, not really. We didn't consider it for these reasons.
Very good. I see no other, Andrew.
Sorry, Jack. I just, again, kind of a click behind today. I'm just wondering whether that panel we talked about could be mounted on the west fence instead, which seems like it would then have no visual impact to the property or reduced.
Well, we actually have talked with the engineer about whether it could be mounted
Or even on the
on
garage.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, on the garage was what we talked about. We hadn't asked about the west panel, Jane. I assume that is something we could certainly check in about, but it may have to do with the footprint configuration of where the generator and chiller are going, because one I think is square and one's rectangular, as I recall. So it may be a factor of where the mechanicals are being located within the caged area. There's not a huge amount of room there. Let's see if I can pull. Let's see, I'll share my screen again and we can.
Yeah, we had started to walk around to the west side, and you can't even get close to it. So it certainly seemed like if you had everything there, it would be quite invisible.
So you can see up here at the top, it looks as though, so the dimensions of what he needs or what he's spec'd, we know that the panels are 8 feet tall and held a foot off the ground, which makes it 9 feet high, and they're roughly 24 feet long. So it may be that the west length of fence is too short to support what they need, but it seems to me it's probably something that could be explored.
I mean, if it's 24, you're showing that dimension as 24.5, so there's no way. I mean, it's basically using up that entire north
Yes, yeah.
fence. Wow.
But
That's
the
huge.
question about the north elevation of the garage, Jane, do you recall how far we got with that conversation?
My memory is that it does have to do with the length, and that if it were reoriented on either the west or the east side, it would intrude even more on the property line.
Right.
I think that was the reason for the orientation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other board comments? Okay, and we can open up to the public. And not sure I see any. So we can come back. Anybody, further discussion, want to make a motion? Yes, Doug.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about what color you were going to make the fence. And, is it going to match the garage color or be some other contrast?
No, we're planning on the color of the fence to be the same as the garage, which is probably best described as an oyster color. It's not white. It's a bit more tan than white.
Good. And I see Johanna.
I'd like to move to accept.
Okay. And so
Do you want to go, you want to say to close the public hearing?
Do we need a motion to close the public hearing, Chris? And
Yes, you do.
then, okay. I will move to close the public hearing.
And then you can
Second.
incorporate that into
And then
your,
can I go ahead and, okay, and approve the
and approve the site plan review
plan
application.
application? Perfect. Thank you.
all right, is there
Second.
second? Okay, Tom. All right, any further discussion?
Do you want to go through conditions and findings and then wrap that into your approval?
It sounds like a good thing. Do you have a draft?
Yeah, I sent out conditions and findings today. I'm sorry I didn't send it out till today, but Pam has it and can bring it up on the screen. So we can go through that and then conditions findings, yes. The findings are,
Do findings first, or did you want conditions?
let's do findings first, and I'll just read through them, and if anyone has a problem with them, they can let Jack know.
Okay, I'll be on the lookout for hands raised.
Okay, 11.2400, the project is in conformance with all appropriate provisions of the zoning bylaw and the goals of the master plan. The applicant has requested a modification of the requirements for fences under section 6.29 of the zoning bylaw. Section 11.2401, town amenities and abutting properties will be protected through minimizing detrimental or offensive actions. All of the changes will occur on site with the exception of trenching along the edge of Triangle Street to allow an electrical connection to a utility pole on Triangle Street. A street opening permit will be required from DPW. Section 11.2402, abutting properties will be protected from detrimental site characteristics resulting from the proposed use. No new lighting is proposed. The property lies to the north of the proposed The property that lies to the north of the proposed generator chiller area will be protected by a 9-foot tall fence. Surrounding areas to the east and west will be protected by a 7-foot 3 1/8 inch fence. 11.2403, adequate recreational facilities and open space are available because the property is large and open and will include substantial lawn areas. 11.2410, unique or important natural, historic, or scenic features will be protected. The proposed project will help to maintain the Emily Dickinson Museum building at the appropriate temperature and with appropriate electrical power supply. The local Historic District Commission has reviewed the project and issued a certificate of appropriateness. 11.2411, the project provides adequate methods of refuse disposal as described in the management plan. 11.2412, the project is connected to town sewer and water. No changes are proposed to the sewer and water connections. 11.2413, the proposed drainage system within and adjacent to the site will be adequate to handle the stormwater. No changes are being proposed to the drainage system. 11.2414, provision of adequate landscaping has been addressed. The property includes significant existing vegetation that will be maintained. 11.2415, the soil erosion control methods are considered adequate to control soil erosion both during and after construction. The town engineer has expressed no concerns regarding soil erosion. 11.2416, adjacent properties will be protected by minimizing the intrusion of various nuisances. 11.2417, adjacent properties will be protected from the intrusion of lighting because a condition of the permit will require that exterior lighting, if any, be downcast and or shielded and or directed so as not to shine onto adjacent properties or streets. No new lighting is being proposed. 11.2418 is not applicable. The property is not located in a flood-prone conservancy district. 11.2419, not applicable. There are no wetlands on or within 100 feet of the property. 11.2420, the planning board did not choose to refer to the design principles and standards set forth in sections 3.3040 and 3.2041 of the zoning bylaw because the local historic district commission has undertaken review of the proposal and has issued a certificate of appropriateness. 11.2421, not applicable. There are no changes proposed to the setbacks, placement of parking, landscaping, and entrances and exits. 11.2422, not applicable. There will be no impacts on steep slopes, floodplains, scenic views, grade changes, and wetlands. 11.2423, not applicable. No new buildings are proposed for the site, and the existing buildings relate harmoniously to each other in architectural style, site location, and building exits and entrances. 11.2424, screening has been provided as appropriate for storage areas, loading docks, dumpsters, rooftop equipment, utility buildings, and similar features. The generator chiller area will be appropriately screened with fencing, and the new transformer at 20 Triangle Street will be appropriately screened by existing vegetation. 11.2430, the site has been designed to provide for the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement, both within the site and in relation to adjoining ways and properties. No changes are being proposed. 11.2431.
Chris, I see Andrew has his hand up.
Oh,
Andrew,
I just want to give you a break, Chris. Now, I was actually, I hadn't even thought about this before, but is there lighting on the back of the garage right now? And sort of pardon my ignorance, but would we need to or want to have lighting here to be able to service this? It's a pretty dark area surrounded by vegetation.
that would be a good question for either Shanti or Jane.
I'll just begin. There's right now there is lighting on the east side of the garage that's mounted on the garage itself, and that will continue in some form, perhaps at a lower lumen. But that is the lighting for that particular area.
Would that cast any light within the new enclosure, though?
Within the new enclosure, no, it would not.
Yeah, I would suspect that you would want the ability to have lighting in there again to be able to service this, in dark hours.
I think that sounds right and reasonable.
okay.
May I say something?
Yes, Chris.
So often service workers bring utility lights with them if they need lighting to, accomplish a task. So we may be able to rely on that.
Yeah, I mean that. I think whatever is reasonable, and if that's something that we feel is reasonable, that's fine. It is a pretty large area, and again, pretty well enclosed. That it would seem like having a permanent coach light or something like that would probably be beneficial.
Like, Andrew, are you thinking about like what period of time? Like just something, 24/7 or?
No, I just think like for being able to service this, I don't think you'd need to have it on.
Oh, just a switch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, that may be beyond the purview of this review. So apologies if I'm, speaking a bit out of turn here, but it seems like it would be a worthwhile thing to have as part of this. It's again, pretty big enclosure to light up with flashlights or something temporary. Thanks.
Thank you. Doug, please.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel strongly about the need for lighting out in that enclosure. I guess if you do put lighting, I might put it on the 9-foot high wall so that it shines toward the garage rather than toward the neighbors. But I mean, it seems like the proposal before us has no new lighting, so we would need to either continue or they would need to come back in order to alter the proposal. Is that right?
You could put a condition on it that says if they do decide to add lighting in that area, that they would come back and show the lighting to you.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not that familiar with the capabilities of Eversource or whoever would be maintaining this. But Chris, you're of the understanding they could just bring portable lighting with them.
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm good with that. But Andrew.
Yeah, I don't want to slow this down. This is like a technicality, so I appreciate what Doug has said, and maybe we just have I don't know if it's just something where we just ask that if lighting is added, that it is done in a manner that's dark sky compliant. And maybe would that be enough where they would not have to come back to us, Chris?
I think so, as long as you mention it. Yes, if they decide to put lighting in that enclosure, that'd be dark sky compliant.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Doug, did you have?
Well, I was just gonna say, there's that double door gate on the east side of this enclosure. Somebody could just drive their vehicle up to it and turn on the headlights. So no objection to where Andrew and where we've gone with this.
Okay.
I did have one other comment I was holding until Chris got all the way through these, which since we've had the interruption, I'll just mention 11.2402, I'd like to remove the 1/8 inch dimension from that text. I think that's overly precise in its dimensional tolerances.
Mhm. Okay. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Does anyone remember where I left off? I think I was on 11.2430. The site has been designed to provide that for the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement, both within the site and in relation to adjoining ways and properties. No changes are being proposed. 11.2431, not applicable. No new curb cuts are being proposed. 11.2432, the location and design of parking spaces, bicycle racks, drive aisles, loading areas, and sidewalks has been provided in a safe and convenient manner. Parking on the site is limited and no changes are being proposed to the parking area. 11.2433, not applicable. Provision for access to adjoining properties is not an issue. The new pedestrian pathway was proposed and approved to connect the two homes in place of an existing deteriorated pathway. That was part of a previous site plan review. And there's also a new pedestrian pathway connecting the homestead and the administrative offices at 20 Triangle Street. 11.2434, not applicable. No new driveways are being proposed. 11.2435, not applicable. Joint access driveways between adjoining properties are not an issue. No changes are being proposed to the driveways. Each building has its own driveway. 11.2436, the requirement for submittal of a traffic impact statement will be waived, I'm assuming. There's very little traffic expected to enter and leave the site given the limited amount of parking on site. And 11.2437, not applicable. No traffic impact report will be required. So those are the findings. Do we agree with those findings?
I believe so. I think with the, well, Doug has his hand up. Doug?
I was just gonna say, I would approve them as amended.
Yeah.
That's right. Approve as amended. Okay. And do you want me to go through the conditions that I've drafted now?
I can't put my hands on them.
I can, Jack.
As them, she can put them up.
You hold on one second. There we go. Can you see them?
Yep. So I left out all those construction logistics things because this project isn't big enough and I'm trying to figure out a way of including those in the future without overwhelming people. But anyway, the conditions for this draft conditions are the development shall be built substantially in accordance with plans submitted to the planning board and approved on, and I would put today's date in if you approve it today. Number 2, development shall be managed substantially in accordance with the management plan submitted to the planning board and approved on. Again, that would be today's date if you approve this today. Number 3, changes to the project or substantial changes to any proposed site plans or to the exterior of the generator chiller area shall be submitted to the planning board for its review and approval prior to the work taking place. The purpose of the submittal shall be for the planning board to approve the change and or determine whether the changes are de minimis or significant enough to require modification of the site plan approval. And the last one, I was thinking there might be lighting. and it says all exterior lighting shall be dark sky compliant. And I could add the words if any. And then exterior lighting shall be downcast, shielded, and shall not shine onto adjacent properties or streets. So do you agree with those conditions, or do you want to add any conditions?
Yeah, I think Andrew doesn't this, is this consistent with what your concerns were?
It is.
Okay.
Were you thinking we should add a conditions if lighting is added to the enclosed area, it shall be dark sky compliant?
Right.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
So does Johanna want to add the approval of the conditions and findings as amended to her motion to approve?
That's exactly what I want to do, Chris. Thank you.
And who, oh, I think it was Tom Long who seconded.
Second again.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Any other further comment? I guess can open it up to the public if we haven't yet.
You did do that, Jack.
Yeah, we already did that. All right, so we're good in there. All right. So any further discussion amongst the board? I see none, so we can just do a roll call. Maria? You're muted.
Approve.
Okay. Andrew?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Johanna?
Aye.
And myself is I. So that's 6-0. Thank you, Jane and Shanti. Oh, Jane, you have your hand up?
Only just to say thank you for your site visit today and for your good questions. We really appreciate your approval of this and look forward to a successful project and to reopening with a fantastically restored homestead next spring.
Mhm.
Great.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Right.
All righty. So, Chris, what do we have coming up with the next item here? Because I thought this is going to be continued, and just how are we going to get through this?
So the next item, what you need to do is you need to open the public hearing for the special permit SPP 2021-03. And then you will entertain a request to continue all of the public hearings related to the Archipelago project to either June 30th or July 7th. And let's see, I have 5 members of the planning board who have said they're available on June 30th. And I have 4 members who've said they're available on July 7th. But maybe when you get around to that, continuation, we can talk about that a little more. But right now, what you need to do is open the public hearing for the special permit. That's the first one listed on the agenda. And then after that, we can talk about the continuation.
Chris, can I
Okay.
point out that it's only 7:20 and we have advertised that the public hearings would open at 7:30?
Thanks. That's a
Yeah.
good thing to
You're
point out.
welcome. I did notice, Jack, that you skipped over the general public comment earlier.
Okay.
So if you
Um,
wanted to, if Chris thought that was a good idea, we could go back to the general public comment period.
That's great. Go.
I did skip over that. I'm sorry. I didn't see any hands raised, but
I
certainly.
didn't,
I should have opened it up, sorry. Yeah. So at this time, public comment period on items that are not on the this evening's agenda.
Hmm.
So I see none. And we can do, skip down to the Form A.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a Form A, and Pam can bring that up on the screen. It's on a road called Blossom down in South Amherst. And the property that's outlined in yellow is one of the two properties that's being altered. So the property in yellow is a flag lot with its access point off Southeast Street. And the property right to the west of that is a lot that's at the end of Blossom Lane. And what's happening here is, as far as we can tell, this property at the end of Blossom Lane was not part of the subdivision of Blossom Lane. It was created later, I believe. But in any event, what's trying to be corrected here with the change in the property line, and I think that red line is, Pam did a good job in trying to represent it, but I think that red line should actually be on the other side of the yellow line. And what they're trying to do, the people who own 23D 67, which is the property right at the end of the Blossom Lane, have built a fence on the property of the flag lot. And so they are proposing to purchase a little strip of land. And if you could make this a little bit bigger, Pam, if you could.
Yeah, I'm working on it, Chris. Let's see. Is that,
Yeah,
does that help?
It helps a little. There's a tiny triangular piece of land here that's along this property.
It's right here.
line. Yeah, and they're proposing to
Whoops.
purchase that from the flag lot. It doesn't really have any negative impact on the flag lot, but it means that the people who own parcel 2 will now have their fence on their own property and can maintain it as they choose. So that's what this is all about. So then you will be asked if you would authorize Jack Jemsick to sign this plan as approval not required, meaning it doesn't need to go through the subdivision control process. And you can sort of acknowledge that by consensus, or Jack can take a vote, whichever. Does anyone have any questions?
Johanna.
Thank you. It's possible this is not germane, but did they just screw up and put the fence on the wrong property, and rather than taking down the fence and repositioning it onto their own property, this is like the path of least resistance?
Well, I think that's the case, but I also think that there was some potential error on the part of a surveyor previously. If you look really closely at this A&R plan, you see something that says line as shown mathematically in plan book. And then they reference a plan book 107, page 81, which sort of indicates to me that there was some difference between the way the line was drawn and the way it was described, but I'm not sure about that. But in any event, the fence did end up on the neighbor's property, and the neighbor wants his fence back. So.
Is the property that is, I think, not, is it 57? Not 67? The property abutting 67 to the east?
Property abutting 57 wow. The one
60.
that is outlined in yellow on the plan that Pam created is 57, and that's the flag lot. And the property to the west of that is 67, and that's the one that has the fence on the wrong side of the line.
So lot 57 has nothing developed on it right now?
No, but there is it's had a flag lot, a special permit for a flag lot ever since 1974.
Okay.
And they're actually in the process of renewing their special permit for the flag lot. And Maureen Pollock is in charge of that. So I've made her aware of this A&R that's coming through.
Okay. Any objection amongst the board for this modification? I see none. All right.
Good. So I'll be bugging Jack to come and sign it, or I will drive down to his house to have him sign it. Thank you.
Upcoming ZBA applications?
We do have some of those as well. Bear with me. So the first thing that I thought that I would mention, at your last meeting, we talked about the project at 187 College Street, and you folks thought you would like to see a presentation. It's a change of use to go from a one-family detached dwelling to a non-owner occupied duplex. So that applicant is going to come to provide you a presentation on June 16th. I believe that's the right date. And then the next three applications are new to ZBA. So at 120 Southeast Street, they're proposing to add a 10 by 18 mudroom onto an existing house. And there's also a foundation there. There's a patio. So the new mudroom is going to go onto the house, but also onto the patio. And that's at 120 Southeast Street. At 300 North Pleasant Street, they're also requesting a change of use, special permit. The existing vet clinic, they have received permission to demo that building, and they are proposing to build a one dwelling unit, which will have 4 bedrooms. There is an existing one family detached dwelling on that property as well, and that will remain. So the existing veterinary clinic is sort of a little bit behind the existing building. And then at the Wildwood Cemetery, or 70 Strong Street, they're seeking a special permit to construct a new maintenance garage, which would be 36 feet by 64 feet, as well as to install 2 new signs. They would both be on Strong Street. One would be at the main entry, and then there would be a smaller sign that is sort of a directional or address sign. And that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so it's 7, I have 7:30. So we can go back to the public hearing, site plan review and special permit, SPP 2021-03, Archipelago Investments LLC has the project 11-13 East Pleasant Street, and they're requesting a special permit for a non-conforming building to be structurally altered and enlarged or reconstructed under section 9.22 of the zoning bylaw for mixed-use building, proposed under section 3.325 of the zoning bylaw. And Chris, what do we hearing from the applicant or not?
I'm not sure if the applicant is here. I don't see the applicant in the attendees list. We do have a request from the applicant in the form of an email, which I
Okay.
forwarded to the planning board earlier this week, and Pam might be able to bring that up. Essentially, what the applicant is asking for is that all of the public hearings that are related to his project at 11 East Pleasant Street be continued to a date certain in the future. So here he's saying this email is to request that the public hearings for 11 East Pleasant and 15 East Pleasant be continued to either June 30th or July 7th. So I gave
So
him,
I can read in the next two items and then we can kind of discuss the rescheduling. How's that sound?
yeah, it would be actually the next three items. There are two more on this page and one on the next page.
Well, I did the first one. Oh,
There are four
Oh.
altogether. Am I wrong about that?
Oh,
Wait,
there's
no, you
three.
did the first one. There are three, sorry.
okay.
Yep.
So the second one is SPR 2021-07 and SPP 2021-02 for Archipelago Investment LLC at 11 East Pleasant Street. A joint public hearing to request site plan review approval for construction of a mixed-use building containing dwelling units in combination with ground floor retail commercial, including approximately 1,300 square feet of retail space, lobby, leasing, fitness, trash area, mechanical space, elevator, parking, and 55 apartments under section 3.325 of the zoning bylaw, and to request a special permit to modify dimensional requirements for height, side, and rear setback under footnote A of table 3, section 6 of the zoning bylaw. And the third is SPR 2021-09 Archipelago Investments LLC, 15 East Pleasant Street. Request site plan review approval under section 5.00 of the zoning bylaw for an accessory and incidental use to a permitted principal use on an adjacent lot for construction, staging, and management of the 11 East Pleasant Street project. Post-construction site will be stabilized with asphalt surface and fenced. So they have proposed those two dates, June 30th, July 7th. And so there's not an applicant presentation. Should we take, well, the discussion amongst the board first on this continuation? Andrew?
Yeah, I was only going to say, Chris, I indicated I'd be available for both days. I'm not available on June 28th. I looked at the wrong week, so I think
It's
that
June
gets us.
30th.
But June 30th, yeah, that I can make the July, I cannot make the June one.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the statistics there then for the June 30th versus July 7th?
I have Tom Long, Johanna Newman, Maria Chow, Janet McGowan, Jack Jemsick, and I didn't hear from Doug Marshall about June 30th.
Doug?
At the moment, I am available on both weeks.
Okay,
My apologies if I didn't reply earlier.
okay. And Janet, or not Janet, Maria may or may not be available on the 7th. We don't know that yet. So why don't we continue to June 30th? And if worse comes to worse and the applicant isn't ready, then you can always continue to another date certain in the future. So do you want to do that? Continue to June?
Okay.
And you have 6 out of 7 members available?
Yeah. What about public comment on this?
Well, it could be in the form of a procedural question, I think, but I don't think you would want to take public comment that's related to the contents of the cases because the applicant isn't here and we're not
Correct.
taking
So
testimony.
I think Pam Rooney had her hand up. I'll check in with her, see what her,
She has put it down.
oh, she put it down. Okay. All right. So someone I'm going to move for the June 30th continuation of this hearing.
So moved.
Andrew. Okay. Second.
I'll second.
All right. That
Who
was
seconded? Tom?
Tom.
And-
Okay. Any further
Andrew
dis-
actually seconded and Tom first. Am
Tom?
I correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Huh. All right.
you.
Any further discussion? See none, so let's do a roll call for that continuation. Maria,
Yes.
Andrew,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Johanna,
I,
and myself as an aye.
And I forgot to ask about the time. So June 30th, are you going to say that it would be 6:35 on June 30th?
Yeah, I think we should, if that agenda is, well, we're having the hearing just for this purpose, correct?
Yep,
There's nothing, yeah, so 6:35. It's kind of,
6:35. Okay, good.
kind of taken for granted there, but very good. All right, so old business. We have proposed changes to the demolition delay zoning bylaw, repeal section 13, demolition delay of the zoning bylaw, adopt new general bylaw for preservation of structures of historical of significance. So we have a presentation from the planning department. Ben?
I'd like to make an introductory statement first, just
Okay.
in context. So Ben Breger, one of our planners, is going to give the presentation, but I just wanted to say a few words. So to explain, why are we doing this? Why are we proposing to change the demolition delay bylaw? And Rob Mora may have a few comments at the end of my statement. For many years, the planning department staff, the building commissioner, and the historical commission have recognized that there are problems with the existing demo delay bylaw. The language is unclear, the process is unclear, the bylaw contradicts itself, and these are among other things, among other problems. If the process were followed as written, it would be difficult to complete the review within the allotted time. The notifications process for publishing legal ads, posting meetings, and notifying abutters conflicts with itself. Because of confusion and the cumbersome aspects of the timelines, there have been instances where when constructive grants of demolition permits have happened, meaning that there hasn't been a good review, it's just gone through because we didn't meet timelines. The new bylaw will improve clarity and efficiency. We hope it will cut down somewhat on the workload of the Historical Commission, and it will provide more predictability for applicants. We've looked at a new model that's been recommended by the state. Planning staff, members of the Historical Commission. We invited Chris Skelly, who used to work for the Mass Historical Commission, to give us a seminar on demolition delay and how it's being handled by other municipalities and what the state's recommendations are. So we learned a lot from that seminar, and we're incorporating aspects of what we learned into this proposed bylaw. The planning department staff and the building commissioner recommend repealing Article 13, demolition delay, from the existing zoning bylaw and adding a section to the general bylaw entitled Preservation of Historically Significant Buildings. Rob Mara may have some more to add to that, but if not, then we would be ready for a presentation by Ben Breger.
Thank you, Ben, or thank you, Chris. Ben?
Great, thank you, Chris. I also just wanted to recognize too that Jane Wald is still here and as a panelist, and she's the chair of the Historical Commission. So we'll likely have things to add as well to this conversation.
Ben, you're a little bit muffled.
Okay, can you hear me better now at all?
Still sort of
Not really.
All right, no more headset. Is that better?
That's better.
Yes.
Okay. I was just saying that Jane Wald is still here in attendance, and she's the chair of the Historical Commission, and so would be invited to comment on the demolition delay bylaw as well. But I will give a brief presentation.
Ben, you might just want to talk louder. I'm not sure about your audio, but it just
Okay. Yeah,
increase the volume. Be great.
Yeah, it sounds good. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
So I am sharing my screen, correct?
Yes.
Oops. There we go. So yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about what is the demolition delay bylaw, how it's been used in Amherst, and then kind of go over some of the issues with the bylaw, and then talk about what we're proposing to replace it. So just briefly, demolition delay bylaw. As of April 2020, 160 towns in Massachusetts have some sort of demolition delay bylaw. So it's a fairly popular bylaw, and has been adopted by many towns in Massachusetts. The purpose of the demolition delay bylaw is really, I think of it as a pause button. It provides an opportunity to press pause on a proposed demolition for a historically significant building, and gives the Historical Commission regulatory authority to, place the delay on the demolition, but then work with an applicant to find an alternative to demolition, so we don't permanently lose a historically significant building. So during the demolition delay period, which the Historical Commission, typically works with the applicant to, investigate, alternatives, whether it's, relocating the property, the structure, restoring it, some sort of adaptive reuse, finding another owner who might be interested in saving the structure. And, in Amherst, we have a 12-month delay period. Some towns have 6, most have 12, some have 18, and some towns are even moving towards a 24-month delay period. So in Amherst, the demolition delay bylaw, Article 13, was first adopted in 1999 and was subsequently amended in 2005. I think that's when they extended it from 6 to 12 months. Here's just 2 examples of buildings that have been saved from demolition in the past few years. The Bertucci's building was a former automobile shop from 1946 that had some unique architectural features and was an important building for the development of downtown. And the Historical Commission placed a delay on the demolition and was able to, the building was saved and a new owner was found, and it, will continue to be a functioning restaurant space in downtown. Likewise, the home on South Pleasant Street, which is an Amherst College home, Amherst College property, 1862. Demolition delay was placed on that property and gave the Historical Commission time to work with the owners to hopefully relocate the building. Still to be determined the exact fate of that property, but it was not, the 12-month delay saved it from imminent demolition. So a demolition delay bylaw has a lot of different kind of components, and the state puts out a model bylaw, but then each town kind of tweaks it to their specific context. So there's just a lot of different things that it's seemingly would be simple, but actually has a lot of nuance involved, such as the definition of a building. How do you exactly define demolition? What are the different thresholds for review and the criteria for determining significance? The length of the demo delay period, and various other things. So in Amherst, this is kind of the current bylaw, and it kind of just pointing out some of the issues with the bylaw. We have a vague definition of demolition, and that's led to it requires the building commissioner to provide a lot of interpretation for exactly when to send things to the Historical Commission versus just approving it or reviewing it administratively. So the definition of demolition currently, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but it's destroying, removing, or raising a structure or portion thereof. So it's that little clause there, or portion thereof, which has caused a lot of confusion, I guess, about what exactly, a portion could be anywhere from, you know, trim on a windows to, you know, an entire addition on a building. So it's, we're proposing to clarify that definition for demolition. You know, similarly, the definition of a structure, you know, is it, you know, involves a lot of nuance. That's basically staying the same. We have a threshold of 50 years. So a structure that's 50 years or older is kind of the first age-based threshold for getting into the historical commission review process. And that's not going to change. We're proposing to keep that 50 years. Similarly, you know, we have 11 criteria in section 13.4 that we use to determine significance. That also, you know, there's some that are very, very, very specific criteria, but then also some that are very vague and can almost be interpreted to catch every and all structures. So we're proposing to kind of clean up that language a little bit. And then, yeah, I think I'll get into more details, but, you know, the demolition delay length is 12 months. That'll stay the same. And kind of one important thing too is there's no appeals process built into the demolition delay process right now. And that's another reason we're proposing to move it out of zoning and into the general bylaw. So then we can write in an appeals process that would likely operate similar to the local historic district commission. The local historic district, their bylaw is in the general bylaw as well. So we would essentially use their appeals process to guide this bylaw. And so, yeah, just some of the issues, you know, there's a high caseload for the historical commission. So because of, you know, there's that first age-based threshold of any building that's proposed for demolition that's 50 years or older, which at this point is a lot of buildings, that would be sent to the historical commission. And also, you know, there's the vague definition of demolition. So it could mean, you know, small changes on many homes or buildings are being sent to the historical commission. And so, you know, it does start to add up. There's a high caseload. Last few weeks ago, we had like four demolition hearings, you know, and they add up, and it, you know, does take away from some of the other good work of the historical commission. And, you know, it's sometimes for an applicant, you know, they might not think that what they're doing warrants going to the historical commission. So this could be a way of kind of making the process more efficient. Yeah, like I said, the definitions are somewhat vague. And also kind of this bullet point down here. Where's my cursor? Yeah. The right now there's not, we kind of do it anyway in the historical commission. We try to work proactively with applicants during the hearing and after delay has been placed to work with the applicant to preserve the building, whether it's through relocation, restoration, you know, finding a new owner. But we wanted to kind of spell out that process a little bit more clearly in the bylaw. And then finally, there's this issue that kind of really only affects, you know, internal town staff, you know, operations, that our historical commission review process is now intermingled with the building permit process. So, and they operate on different timelines. So when someone submits a demolition permit application, it both starts the historical commission clock and the building permit clock. And so that has caused some issues, certainly, because yeah, for a variety of reasons. So we're proposing to kind of pull those processes apart so that someone can just submit, so they can know essentially if they'll have a delay placed on their property first, and then once they've gone through that process, they can apply for the demolition permit. So yeah, and finally, yeah, and also the appeals process. So these are these flow charts I made that kind of show how the process works essentially. So starting from the left, this is how the current bylaw functions. An applicant submits a demolition permit application. Staff reviews it and first looks at, is it meet the definition of demolition, and is the building 50 years or older? If it's yes to those, then it goes to the historical commission, and if no, if it's less than 50 years and does not, and it's not really demolition, then it's we can issue the demo permit. If it goes to the commission then has two purposes at its public hearing. It's it's a duly advertised public hearing with notice to abutters and legal ads, and a lot of work goes into, obviously, as you guys know, a lot of work goes into getting ready for a public hearing, and at that public hearing we'll determine if the building is significant, and then if it is significant based on those 11 criteria, then it goes, and then we look at will the demolition of the historic be detrimental to the historical or architectural heritage of the community. And so there's kind of three outcomes from that public hearing. If it's not significant, then we issue the demo permit. If it can be found to be significant, but the impact would not be detrimental, so that could, the demo permit would then be issued. And then when the delay is placed, that's when a building is found to be significant and there would be a detrimental impact of the demolition. So those are kind of the three outcomes from the public hearing. And so what we're proposing is that there's the step to determine significance is taken out of that public hearing and is done by staff and a member of the historical commission with using a revised set of criteria, which I'll show in a second. But essentially that serves two purposes. So the idea is that it cuts down on the caseload for the historical commission because only buildings that are significant, found to be significant, are being sent to the commission. And two, it also makes the process more efficient for applicants, so they don't have to wait upwards of 30 days for just the hearing to begin, and so if it's not a significant building. So in this proposal, staff and a member of the historical commission would review for now three different things: definition of demolition, the 50-year or older threshold, and then whether the building is found to be significant. If it's no, then the demo permit is issued, and if yes to those items, then at the historical commission then has a duly advertised public hearing 30 days later, where after a lot of more information and research has been carried out. And then at this public hearing, the historical commission is really only focusing on whether or not to place the delay. We've had, so that I think is where the historical commission wants to be. They want to be focusing on the detrimental impact of the demolition and spending more time on that rather than looking at significance for more buildings. So sorry, I'll just go back to here. I think I just wanted to mention too, we're also adding in this ability, I guess, of the commission. The historical commission often asks about the future plans for a property. So we're often faced with the building is being taken down, and we have to, the historical commission judges the historical aspects of the existing building, but then is often left wondering what's going to take its place. Is it a a building that's going to be equally, or would it be a building that has architectural value, contributes to the architectural and historical value of the neighborhood, and so we're proposing to add the ability, I guess, during this public hearing for the historical commission to consider the owner's plans for reuse, reconstruction, or restoration on the property, and actually spell that out rather than just kind of being silent on the issue altogether. Yeah, I think I've hit these points. The definition of demolition is down here. It's kind of long, but we want to basically, there's kind of three parts to it. There's kind of total destruction of an entire building. So that would be complete demolition. There's a second one, which is partial demolition. So pulling down, destroying, erasing, we're saying 25% or more of the front, back, or side elevations. With the gross square footage. Okay, yeah, 25% or more of the front, back, or side elevations. That's in line with how other communities measure demolition based off of like a partial amount. And then finally, this kind of this third point, which is changing, modifying, or removing important architectural elements from a structure, which define the historic integrity of the design. So that could be kind of unique features of a building that kind of add to the historic integrity of the building. And we do have some exemptions in there as well. So I kind of went over this already, the two-step process for review. This is kind of the new significance criteria that staff and the historical commission member would use to determine significance and whether it needs to go to a public hearing. So essentially, if the building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places or the Massachusetts State Register of Historic Places, would be number one. If the building has value in association with the location or one or more historic persons or events, or with the broad architectural, social, political, economical, or cultural heritage of the town of Amherst, or the building alone in the context of a group of buildings or as part of the viewshed has historical or architectural value as to period, style, craftsmanship, method of building construction, or in association with a recognized architect or builder. So essentially the building has architectural value or was built by a recognized architect or builder. I kind of went over this a little bit already, just the new criteria for determining whether to put a delay, kind of allowing the commission to look at plans for reuse, reconstruction, or restoration, but otherwise, looking at whether this kind of loftier question of whether the building would represent a loss to the Amherst community if demolition authorization were granted. Talked about this already. And then talked about this already, just kind of separating out those two processes. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we're looking to remove this from zoning bylaw and add it to general bylaw. So I'm not exactly sure kind of how that process works with town council and all of that, but we would need planning board support, I guess, to certainly look at the rescinding this from zoning and just making sure you guys are all comfortable that what we're adding to general bylaw, meets, is something you all feel comfortable with when recommending to take this out of zoning. So Yeah, I know that was a lot, and this might be new to some folks, but thanks for bearing with me, and certainly let me know if you have any clarifying questions or if I can make anything more clear.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
So Chris, what's the objective here? Are we providing a recommendation to the
Not yet.
CRC?
You don't have to provide a recommendation yet. This is
Just informational?
it's informational and it's an opportunity for you to ask questions. It's probably going to go, I don't think it's going to go back to CRC again, but if you're comfortable with it at this point, we could bring it to town council. But I think it might have to go back to the historical commission one more time. I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah.
we're trying to get it to a point where we can bring it to town council and have them refer it back for a public hearing. And I wanted to let you know, in case you haven't read your email today, that Janet McGowan did submit comments about this demo delay bylaw. And so you might want to have time to read her comments, and then we can address her comments either now or at a future time. So it's really an opportunity for you to talk, ask questions, tell us what you like and don't like, anything that you want us to change, etc. And Rob Mora is here, and he's been really quite involved in the development of this bylaw, so he's available to answer questions if you wanted to ask him questions.
Okay. So Andrew and then Doug.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ben. So just want to make sure it's clear too. When you mentioned was the primary reason of moving it out of zoning is to enable the appeal process? Is that what I thought I heard you say earlier? Is that the primary driver for this?
That's my understanding. I think that it's to add the information about the appeals process. And then, I think just like on a broader level, zoning is more to do with the regulation of land use, I guess, whereas this is kind of, a bit more about, what you can and can't do with the building, I guess, and, value to the town overall. So that's how that decision was made. And, it's another thing, most communities have it in the general bylaw. And most communities have this in a general bylaw. And it's also how we treat the local historic district as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying. And then a couple quick sort of follow-ups to that. One would be, it might be useful then on the chart, your flow chart, to have like a loop back for what that appeal process would look like. I'm kind of curious, if you do choose to appeal, where do you kind of come back into the process? So like visually, that I would find that to be like a useful add to that. I was also curious, what happens if the age of the building is unknown? And I'm thinking like an out structure or like outbuilding or some type of non like residential building. Like do we round up? Like do we just kind of associate it with the age of the actual house? Just curious if anybody had a thought or knew anything about that.
May I answer that?
Sure, Chris.
I believe the way it works is if the age is unknown, we assume it's 50 years or older.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then one other quick question I had was just, could you just explain a little bit more about what happened with Bertucci's in 2018? So I know it was Bertucci's, and then it was Porta, and now it's going to be the new restaurant. So, but I don't remember the timing. So like Bertucci's closed, and then was there a change of ownership? Like, I'm just curious to see how this actually manifests itself.
Ben?
That's before my time. So, Chris, do you recall?
I think I can help with that, and Rob might be able to help too. But so Bertucci's closed. There was a landowner who owned the Bertucci's property and several other properties. I think they might have owned 4 or 5 properties in the general vicinity. And they had a proposal to build a mixed-use building there. And at the same time, or around that same time, they applied to demolish the Bertucci's building. And I think um, the Historical Commission may have felt some pressure of the public. I'm not sure, maybe Jane has a better interpretation of this, but anyway, I think the public had heightened awareness about this as a result of the mixed-use building being proposed. And so when the Historical Commission reviewed the Bertucci's building demolition application, they felt that, they really wanted to try to preserve that building rather than having it torn down and having something else built in its place. That's kind of my memory of it. But again, Rob or Jane might have a more detailed memory.
Jane, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, I can only add just a little bit to that. And the general outlines that Chris has presented are those that I remember. There was also a proposal from a member of the public, community member, for considering a way to reuse that space. And so that reuse the space essentially as it exists. And so that also helped to influence the Historical Commission to think that there might be an adaptive reuse possibility, and wanted to work with the owner about that.
Okay, so it was the same owner, and they just determined that, facing this 12-month delay, it would be easier or more beneficial for them to reuse it and abandon their plans for the mixed-use building.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I believe that they took Porta as a tenant after the Historical Commission review and demolition delay. That's
Okay.
my memory.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to understand how this actually plays out in real world situations here. So I appreciate the backstory. Thanks.
Hey, just to continue on that, when a building like paints, has a new coat of paint and all that, we review signs, but that seems like things kind of happened at that site that just happened, and I was wondering if the process was consistent with our bylaws with regard to Porta. More review. Chris, do you?
Well, I would say that the Porta didn't really pay attention to what was required to open a restaurant or change the facade of the building or really much of anything. They really were, I'll use the term scofflaws, because they were that in many ways. And they were that in the way of starting their business and also in operating their business. So I think it wasn't a very successful start. And we have some new people who are trying to open a restaurant there now, and they are much more cooperative and doing what they need to do to abide by the rules. And I think they'll be good tenants.
Great. Okay, so we have Doug, then Tom. Doug?
Yeah, thanks, Jack, and thanks, Ben. My question has to do with if a property is in a local historic district, I can imagine with this bifurcated process that someone would apply for a demolition and be approved by the Historic Commission, and then they have to kind of do the same thing over again later when they try to get a building permit, but have to go through the local historic district commission. Could you explain the relationship and whether there's improved coordination between those reviews for a demolition request in a local historic district?
So I'll say that the proposal doesn't do anything to clarify that process. I think right now there would be review by both commissions. If a demolition application is submitted for a property in the local historic district, it would be reviewed by historical commission and local historic district commission. And so far, there hasn't been any conflicting votes on that. They typically vote together, I guess. But I think I think you do raise a good point about what that would look like. And I know in some other communities that have a local historic district, the local historic district has sole kind of authority in that area, and the historical commission does not kind of review demolitions there. But I'd be curious to kind of learn a little bit more about that history and kind of how that's been handled in the past.
Well, I can imagine that there's rarely a disagreement between the two about the significance of a building. I'm more interested in whether we're taking a timeline that now takes, say, 3 months to get through both of those entities, and now it takes 6 months, or, you know, have we made things worse from a timeline point of view, or
I see.
or not?
Jane or Chris, did you want to?
May I say a few things?
Yes, Chris.
So I think you could probably do the reviews simultaneously. You wouldn't have to do them one after another. And the other thing is that the Historical Commission has power to impose a demolition delay of 12 months, but the local Historic District Commission actually has a power to prevent demolition completely. So those are two different levels of power with regard to demolition. That's all I wanted to say. Jane Wald has her hand up.
Okay, Jane. And then Tom.
Yeah, the way it's actually worked in practice, I mean, Ben is correct that, and Chris is correct, that there can be two hearing processes, but the way it's worked in practice is that the Historical Commission recognizes that the local Historic District Commission actually has more regulatory ability than the Historical Commission, which has only the tool of demolition delay. So in general, if a property is within one of the local historic districts overseen by the commission, it's basically the Historical Commission's position that that would take precedence. And in practice, I think there have seldom been two reviews.
Well, isn't it true that the local historic district review isn't triggered until you show up for a building permit with Rob Mora?
Are you talking about the local historic district commission or the historical commission? Local Historic District Commission. I think probably Chris or Ben can answer that better than I can, but it's been my, well, for example, my experience with the Emily Dickinson Museum is that that plans need to be presented in a kind of sequential process, including the local historic district commission, before getting to the point of requesting a building permit. So a local historic district commission review actually would happen in the process prior to review by the historical commission.
Okay, thank you.
Great, Tom.
Sure, thanks. I have a question and I'm trying to figure out how to actually phrase it in a way that allows us to have a conversation about it. So I'm imagining the capacity for individuals to have significant loss by way of fact that not all of these historic buildings have been archived and are publicly known, and that I can invest in a property, maybe a residential one, expecting to take down this piece of this shed, barn, whatever it is on that property, and not finding out until I'm at demo that this is an issue. And I'm wondering, A, is there a process by which that owner can find out whether this is significant before they buy that land? So does that, and in this case, does that then go through planning staff, or does that go to the historical commission? And secondly, is there any protection for that owner who buys this piece of land with this expectation that they're going to demo something and improve that property value, and instead cannot do that and might have the maybe enabled to sell that property again for what it was worth? So I guess the question is, what is this relationship to the individual owner, and what are the processes by which they might protect themselves or be protected by this process?
So Chris or Ben?
So I would say that sort of, let's see, usually smart owners, you can't expect everybody to be smart, but usually smart owners will contact us before they purchase the property and ask what they can do there. And along with what can you do, what can't you do? And we would, usually we meet with people who come to us. We meet as a group and we share information with them about, potential need to go to the historical commission or local historic district or design review board or planning board or whatever it is. There could be people who buy property without, doing that kind of due diligence. And, that's unfortunate. But generally speaking, if people are going to make a big enough investment, they would come to us and ask questions. That doesn't necessarily apply to single family homes, but for other types of property, it does apply.
Tom,
Fair enough.
Okay. Maria.
Ben has his hand up. Maybe, did you want to answer a question, Ben, to the previous?
Yeah, I was just going to add to saying that the bylaw that we're proposing kind of adds in a step where staff and a member of the historical commission would be able to quickly get someone an answer about whether a building is significant or not, and would mean it would not need to go to a public hearing. Whereas right now, that determination needs to be made at a public hearing, duly advertised, 14 days notice, abutters being notified. And so for the historical commission to even have that conversation, it's at a public hearing, but the bylaw revision that we're proposing makes that step more easier, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. Maria?
So yeah, I think that all these improvements are great because you're streamlining the process, and I don't have a problem with moving it out of zoning into general if that's what's sort of standard a lot of towns have been doing. Something in the previous comment kind of confused me about it sounded like there is 2 steps. You do have to do the local historic commission before the historic commission, but maybe that's always been the case. It's not like anything you're proposing now, Ben, that you've been working on, is causing that. It's just always been the case. So yeah, I've had a lot of issue with this because I've had a lot of projects where it's too late. The people will come to me and then I look and I'm like, oh, you're already non-conforming, or oh, you're already historical in the local historic district. And so yeah, most people don't do this kind of research when they buy a house, maybe for commercial projects. But so yeah, it's I mean, I think Amherst has a reputation for being a town that, you know, they do everything by the book, and it is tricky, but it's not like they're making it more difficult. It's just everything has to be by the book. So yeah, I've had a lot of projects where we've had to go through a lot. But I just have a random question. So you were talking about the historic commission overseeing things. Do they, for things that are on the National Historical Register, that doesn't fall under any of this purview? That's just something that's unrelated to anything that this bylaw would be reviewing. Is that correct? Like there's a local historic district, but then there's national historic designations throughout town. Do you know if
Chris
that-
has her hand up.
oh, okay.
So usually the National Register entity only comes into play when someone is requesting federal or state funds to do something on a property. The designation that you're a National Register property is really kind of honorific, more than it is regulatory, although it is being proposed as a criterion for deciding whether a building is significant or not.
Oh, okay. All right. So is that different from before? Or that's always been the case? Okay.
That's the same, yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Good, Andrew?
Yeah, just hearing Maria and Tom, it almost makes me think like we just need good. I don't know if we necessarily need to outreach, but I just wonder if the realtor community stays plugged in with the town, you know, relative to these types of changes or not. But I think that's the primary source of information that you know that residential homeowner would come in, is they'd run it by the realtor. So hopefully the realtor community out there is keeping up to speed on this.
Very good. Jane, you have your hand up.
I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but that's a very good point about the realtor community. There's also a state database of structures that have been basically evaluated or nominated to be historic structures, and that's a very easily accessible database. And there are probably, I might get the number, misremember the number, but it's something like maybe 1,200 buildings in Amherst that are in that database. And then we know from other surveys done over the years that there are probably another 600 to 900 buildings that should be added to that inventory. And that the Historical Commission has recognized that as a good tool, you know, having a comprehensive inventory of buildings that might be eligible for some kind of review of this stuff, having that put together and easily accessible, and you know, provided to realtors, and even perhaps mailings to homeowners. That's kind of an ambition that has been an ambition of ours, and maybe you know, it's something that we'd like to see happen at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. I don't see any other hands on the board. We have public comment on this, Chris?
You can have public comment, yep.
Okay. Public is invited to speak on the demolition delay zoning bylaw. And I see none. Okay. So it's 8:26, so it looks like we might be able to wrap up here soon. Topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours prior to the meeting.
I have no topics, and Pam just informed me about a few days ago that we only need to have this on the agenda once. We don't need to have it under new business and old business, so that's good news. So we
Okay.
only need to say it once.
Good. And I guess one thing we didn't hit was the upcoming SPP, SPR, SUB applications.
We have one application from Greenfield Savings Bank to install an ATM machine at the Newmarket Shopping Center. I may have mentioned that before, but that'll be coming to you sometime soon.
Newmarket Shopping Center?
Newmarket Shopping Center is at the intersection of Amity Street and University Drive, and they have a kind of arched sign there. They're going to take the sign away, and they're going to put a little area where you can drive in and, you know, get do whatever you have to do at the ATM. And that's an accessory structure to the Greenfield Savings Bank that exists in the building that's as part of that shopping center.
Good, good. So planning board committee and liaison reports. We had an executive committee last Thursday, but you know, nothing of note. We will have an annual meeting coming up of some sort. I don't think it's going to be in person, but I don't think that has been decided yet. So the Community Preservation Act Committee, got Andrew.
No updates.
Okay. And the Ag Commission, Doug.
No updates.
And Design Review Board, Tom.
We had our archipelago presentations postponed as planning board did. We had a review of some signage and awnings and outdoor space on Kellogg Street in the old Rayo's space that was approved, just marginal changes. We have a couple upcoming projects for some signage in Goberry, new signage for the cemetery, the West Cemetery. And I think we have a review of 2 new public bike stations that are coming up. And that's, I believe, next week. So that's June 7th.
Great. Now, are we still reviewing some of the signs, or is that changed, or?
The planning board only needs to review signs that are in specific locations, like Newmarket Shopping Center is one of them, and the Big Y Shopping Center on University Drive. So it's usually written into the site plan review that there's a sign plan for those sites. And when signs are changed there, then those signs have to come to the planning board. Otherwise, you usually only review them when they're part of a site plan review application.
Good, good. And do you have an update for the CRC?
I was not able to attend the last CRC meeting, but Ben was there, and maybe he could give a brief report about what they talked about.
That's a good question. Well, we talked about the demolition delay bylaw. I presented it, kind of gave the same presentation to them, and was able to incorporate their feedback into what I presented today. I honestly am blanking on what else we talked about. I was so focused on my bit.
How did they act on our recommendations for the building moratorium and the inclusionary zoning bylaw?
Yeah, there was, yeah, that's good. Yeah, there was good discussion on both of those. And I believe they voted to recommend both.
I don't think they voted on inclusionary zoning yet. That's coming up on June 8th. So I believe they voted on moratorium, but
yeah,
they voted on inclusionary zoning.
Okay.
In approval or disapproval of the moratorium?
They voted not to support the moratorium.
Yeah, okay. All right. So report of the chair, I guess I'm interested in terms of how we're going to go back in person and how that's going to work, and what's the game plan, or is it too early to discuss? Have you heard anything, Chris?
I think it's potentially too early. The earliest we would have to go back into in-person meetings would be June 15th or anytime after June 15th. We're going to have a meeting, staff is going to have a meeting with the town manager fairly soon. I can't remember the exact date, but it's, within the next week or so. And he's going to
Thursday.
inform us about, what is upcoming. My impression is that, well, I do know that the governor has filed some legislation in Boston to extend the ability to have remote meetings into the future. I think it's as far as September 1st. So if that passes, then we would have the ability to have remote meetings until September 1st. And I think there's a lot of scrambling in Boston to try to figure out, what does the end of the emergency mean? So, but I think, we're probably good for a while to have remote meetings, but I'll let you know if that changes.
Okay, because it came up during the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission with regard to doing the combination of the Zoom and in person. And I guess there's this feature called OWL, just like the bird, that works with Zoom, and it just, I guess, turns and looks at the person talking and sort of thing. And so it's a nifty device, but I'm just wondering, it's, if we meet in person again, we're gonna have to like generate all this paper, I think, unless we all have, our laptops or iPads or things like that. It's just going to be a change to start meeting in person. I am attached to all my screens and things like that, but I'm sure you'll have lots to talk about because we're not the only board, obviously. So lots of opinions, I'm sure. Report of staff, Chris. Andrew, please.
So yeah, I wasn't sure too, just as part of that discussion, whether you anticipate a hybrid solution might be in place, or do you think it's all remote or all in person? So whenever those convos come up, when the world's back to normal, I travel a fair amount for work, and it would actually be super helpful for me to manage my time if I could remote in to some of those meetings instead of adjusting my travel schedule.
So even if we do go back to fully in person, there is an option for individual members of boards and committees to act remotely, as long as there's a quorum present on site, and as long as the chair is present on site. You have to apply in advance. I think you have to apply to the chair and tell them, I'm going to be away. May I remote in on this date? But that's already in place. And I think that there are considerations about having hybrid types of meetings as we transition back to whatever the new normal is, but we don't really have any details about that yet.
Thanks.
Yeah, what's the one law that Steve Schreiber brought up, where as long as you look at the video?
Oh, that's the Mullen Rule?
Mullen Rule, yeah, okay.
Rule. So
that's much different than the live sort of Zoom interaction that we've become accustomed to. And
that would be a good thing to bring up for Andrew, who's potentially not able to come to the June 30th planning board meeting, that he could watch the video of that meeting and then at a subsequent meeting be able to vote on the archipelago projects. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's an option that's available. What you have to do is watch the video or read the material and the minutes of the meeting, and then you make a statement, a written statement. I think it can be by email or handwriting, or there are different forms, but members of the planning board have taken advantage of this in the past, and it's really useful because you're allowed to miss one meeting without consequence. Okay.
Great, I think.
Board of Staff, you asked me about that.
Yes.
I just wanted to encourage people to participate in the Juneteenth celebration that's coming up on June 16th, which is in a couple of weeks. But part of that is going to be the public unveiling of these Civil War tablets that we've had ever since the late 1800s. They were created in the late 1800s by the Grand Army of the Republic in Amherst, and they're really quite amazing. They're big, giant tablets with the names of people who fought in the Civil War. And Ben has been very instrumental in bringing them back and being able to have them displayed. They're going to be displayed in the lower area of the bank center. And so you might want to just come by on a Saturday and see those, Saturday, June 16th. And there'll be a lot of other events happening then too, but it's going to be an exciting time in Amherst. So I just wanted to mention that.
Good to know. Thank you. So I think we adjourn, what, 8:37? Thank you all. Our next meeting, do you have a meeting in 2 weeks?
Yes, you do.
Okay,
Meeting on June 16th.
okay. All right,
No,
well,
not June 16th. June. Is it June 16th?
yeah,
It will be June 16th.
Yeah.
yeah.
Did I get
My
that?
daughter's birthday.
Oh, June 19th is the date of Juneteenth, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
19th, yeah. We have the 18th off. Yeah. So I said the wrong thing.
Oh,
June
okay.
16th is planning board. June 19th is Juneteenth celebration.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, all. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.